About a year ago, my boyfriend and I just moved into his grandparents' house shortly after they passed away. It's in the middle of nowhere and surrounded completely by woods, except for two clearings, one small one on the right side of the driveway and a very large one across the old road that runs by the front of the house. I was a staunch, non-superstitious person up until this point, and have always blown off my own and others' freaky experiences as some logical, yet highly unusual event. Be me. Recently red-pilled on all things X. I have lived here for approximately 2 months. So far so good. I am slightly creeped out at the idea that one of my grandparent-in-laws have passed here. I eventually come to terms with it. On several occasions, at or after midnight, I will hear a strange whooping/call sound that nobody can identify exclusively when I am outside. I never ever hear it when I am inside. My boyfriend notices this sound too without me telling him about it. Eventually pinpoint the sound to be coming from the far tree line at the clearing across the old road. I have multiple people well versed in local wildlife attempt to figure it out, but they can give me no clear answer. I blow it off as usual for a month. I quit my old job as it was god tier shit, and minimum wage cook life is also shit. I am applying for new jobs online. I need my wallet for info. I realize it's in my truck. Dread the hoop. My vehicle is positioned in the driveway between two other cars. The right car sits at the start of a small clearing, while the leftmost car blocks the view of other vehicles from the doorway. I reluctantly speed walk to the truck. I make it just to the front of the left car. I hear what sounds like someone spinning on their heels on gravel just behind the rightmost passenger side door. Do the same, but in the direction of the doorway. I realize I'm a bitch if someone is taking my shit. I am praying for strength. I storm the position in quick succession. Nothing. What? Must have been one of the 2.4 million dogs on my property. We love dogs. I turn around just in time to see very quick movement under my truck towards the dense woods behind it. Just the dogs, it must be. Complete and total silence. There is no other way into the house, and I need the job, so regretfully, I approach the truck and open the driver's side door. I cannot shake the feeling that this is somehow an ambush. I also cannot remember how I left my wallet in the truck, as I always have it on me. It's all the way in the corner of the back seat. It's a 2-door, so quite a reach. I snatch it just as I hear something very large moving in the nearby brush. Got a blast. I book it inside like Usain Bolt. I apply for a new job in my newly built fortress. A couple months later, I have the job. I bought a custom shotgun for when that thing shows up again. Since that night, the whooping has stopped, but the dogs bark almost every hour of the night since. I work till midnight every day. I don't get home until about 1ish. Sitting in living room, playing some video with boyfriend. He gets up to go to the bathroom, which is located right next to me. The TV is situated in front of a large studio-like window with heavy curtains. Just moments after he closes the door, the windows open completely. And hard. I shoot up, expecting a robber. Today is the day. I whip out my boomstick and prepare to make ground beef of my soon-to-be victim. Nothing. Only complete silence floods the room from the now gaping pain. My morale drops into the negatives. I investigate the entire property to no avail. The whole time it feels like I'm doing exactly what whatever it is wants me to do, like I'm walking into a trap again. I ensure that every lock imaginable is secured. There is nothing for quite some time. I occasionally hear sounds under the living room. Bumps, creaks, scraping, and that sort of thing. It must just be rats, am I right? While at work, I get a call from my boyfriend. He heard a tapping on the window behind the couch. That window is at least 8 to 9 feet above the ground. It must be a large insect or a nocturnal animal. He calls me again, saying it was like someone had attempted to punch through the glass. It was loud, like a gunshot. I get home and immediately notice the scratching sound. I can feel it in my shoes. Play some video. There is the same loud bang again, but underneath me this time. I whip out my shotgun. I intend to empty the box of shells into every living thing I find. I crawl under the back deck to find 2 entrances. One is sort of locked from the inside, but appears to be an extensive low crawl space. The other is jammed and cannot be opened. I fire a shot into the doorway and call it a night. Literally nothing happens for many months. It is now last night after work. I finally feel at ease at home. It feels oh so wholesome. I am eating the spaghetti when a loud hissing sound emerges from behind the washing machine. I check it out. The motherfucking water line is gushing water into the room and into a large space down below. I can't see the extent of the damage. I snag my boyfriend, wrench, and hat before marching my way to the jammed door. I haven't gotten around to exploring this area as I have been involved with IT schooling and work. I can hear the hissing clearly behind the door. It won't budge, so we kick at it for what seems like forever. It finally moves a 1/4 inch. I am immediately hit with an intense smell. It's a mix of must, Clorox bleach, and mold. I notice there's a fully developed cement basement with a crawl space shaft that immediately turns in 2 directions. There is a rack with many Clorox bleach jugs completely dusted over. I finally kick the door open all the way to reveal several different crawl spaces leading under the entire 3,000-foot square building. Holy fucking shit. There are many Vietnam-era duffel bags stuffed with torn and rotten MREs, medical supplies, and just various items. One lays on the ground torn completely in half, with its contents strewn all about. I remember that my water bill is rising. I turn that summer bitch righty-tighty forever. Again, it feels like this is what it wants and that I am going to die down here. I finally get the water to stop. I start to get the hell out of Dodge, but quickly inspect the water line for damage. The damn thing was a clean cut. I can't make any sense of it, other than to get the fuck out of there. I lock all the doors. I lock all of the windows. That feeling of easiness and wholesomeness is completely null and void now. I finally get to sleep after a long while. Be tonight. I spent the whole day in town with friends and family to get my mind off of things. It was a really good day actually. I get home at like 1 in the morning. I go out to inhale a cancer stick. I notice a pale birch tree I haven't seen before in the tree line about 20 meters away from me. The moonlight makes it almost glow. Are those eyes? The wide spheres of bright green are at least 10 feet high considering elevation, so I am still convinced it's a tree. I get my boyfriend to come and say. He sees it and immediately nopes his way inside. I follow. I am not sure if I'm a fucking paranoid idiot, so I grab a flashlight and go back out there. The fucking thing is gone. All 10 or so feet of the tall, pale, thin figure is entirely gone. I nope my way inside and immediately start typing this up. It's 5 a.m. and I have heard strange sounds all over the house. I'm not saying it's a skinwalker or anything, but boy, I'm about to blitzkrieg my way out of here. If you guys want, I can post a picture of the basement and crawl spaces with a timestamp on them, all in the morning. It's too spoopy for me at the moment. I'm going in, boys. There are wasps out the ass in here. The lighting is shit, guys, so trust me, the timestamp is there. In the previous pic anyway. Here you can see the rack of Clorox and whatnot. There are about 2 crawl spaces on this side of the room. This is where I felt like something was staring holes into the back of my head while turning the valve. There are 3 spaces here, each jutting off in a different direction. This is the valve I was turning with the strength of several Hercules. After these pictures, the OP never updated the thread again, and was never heard from again. Be me. This happened to me around 2 years ago now. I am living with a relative at the time, as I was homeless, after my landlady kicked me and the other tenants out, because she was afraid we'd give her kids the Rona. Was that illegal as fuck? Yes. Did she care? No. Did I try to fight the eviction in court? I didn't really see the point, and honestly, I didn't think I would win. The house is about 40 minutes away from a wildlife preserve, so the backyard leads to some woods. I am sitting on the back deck of the house around early May. COVID restrictions be damned. It's about 6 p.m. exactly when I start hearing my uncle. It's odd since I had not thought he was out in the woods. I thought he was still inside. My uncle is asking for my help. He implied that he was wounded or something from how he sounded. I am utterly confused because I thought he was almost definitely still inside. I decide to go in. I asked for help from his kid's mother. Never married, so not my aunt by any stretch. I stop dead in my tracks when I see my uncle, all okay, right on the couch in the living room, from the room where the back porch door leads to. He asked me why I look like a dork who forgot his man purse at home. I ask him if he was outside any amount of time earlier. He says no, because he didn't want his neighbor snitching to the police that quarantine in the neighborhood was being broken. The police in my state actively encouraged that. I go back down to the basement where I crashed. I start hearing my uncle scream for help from outside, seeming more frantic now. I take a good look at the one window that peers outside and cover it up with clothes. I move myself over to the nearest corner as I continue to hear my uncle being perfectly imitated. I sit in the corner, frozen in complete fear as I begin hearing tapping on that window. The sound of his voice is still just as intense as before. I force my eyes shut and wait exactly an hour before it stops. The walls are very thin in the house, so I can hear it when the frantic screaming continues. Now this person copying my uncle is banging on the garage door with all of their might. This goes on for 4 hours. I don't sleep for 4 days after that. I barely eat or even leave that basement either. The next morning, we did get visited by the police. The neighbor across the street, aka the Snitch, called them after seeing a pale, skinny, naked man bashing on the garage door. The neighbor did not see anything beyond that description apparently. I eventually crash and pass out for about 3 days due to the lack of sleep. It took me about 2 months before I felt brave enough to remove the clothes from the windows. I was around 14 years old at the time this happened. I was riding my bike around the countryside with my friends as per usual. My rear brake suddenly becomes unhinged. I notice just in time and pull the front brake instead. Phew. I stop and fix the problem. I need to head home. I ride up to the side of the road. My back brakes suddenly break again. I am too freaked out to do anything other than pull the back brake level over and over again as I roll across the road at a snail's pace. Everything slows down significantly. The drivers don't seem to have noticed me at all. I can see their faces in perfect detail. They are looking straight through me. The Ferrari goes straight through me. The Land Rover goes straight through me. The Ford drives straight through me. I reach the other side of the road and ride up the embankment that stops my bike. I am immediately convinced that I am dead. I don't want to turn around just in case I happen to be spread out on the floor in the middle of the road. I eventually do turn around. There is nothing there. My body, thankfully, is not lying there. I continue riding home. Nobody crosses my path. Nobody is anywhere to be seen. I am even more convinced now that I am dead. I get home. My mom asks me how I am. I smile and go upstairs. I stare in the mirror for ages. I cried myself to sleep that night. I remember it like it was yesterday. Be me. I was around 19 years old when this happened. I had just gotten a job working security. My young cousin is in the hospital. I had to work that night, so I didn't go to see her in the hospital and never talked to her when she was sick from cancer. My work site was a former factory, and I had to sit in the guard shack while the factory was pretty much closed down. The lighting was poor, very poor, and only the guard shack had lights around the area. I had just a flashlight. It is the middle of the night and my parents called me. They tell me that my cousin has died. I started to feel sad and ashamed that I never got to say goodbye to her. She died that night. I was in the guard shack and went for a walk at night. I saw a figure of a girl somewhere in the shadows. I am freaked out. I went back to the guard shack and stayed there the whole night. I am not sure what the fuck happened, but I always felt a bit odd about that day. I have never even visited her gravesite, so I am still feeling guilty. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. What is the scariest phone call you've ever gotten? This doesn't exactly fit, but it's kind of related. I grew up in a small house in the woods with a swamp and a pond very close by, so there were a lot of animals. I was a very paranoid child, to the point that I would work myself into panic attacks over hearing the house creak or something outside, and let my imagination just run wild. I got to about 4th or 5th grade, when there would be a period of time before going to the bus stop in the mornings when I was home alone. My parents knew this would be hard for me, and let me call them at work when I needed to so that they could calm me down. One day, I was hearing a lot of noises outside. I was trying to keep telling myself it's just animals in the woods, but I was getting more and more worked up. Then there was a loud cracking noise, and I panicked and decided to call my dad. This was back in the days when phones still had cords. I ran to the kitchen phone and started dialing, but realized I was pressing the wrong buttons, so I held that reset button thing down and tried again, but when I put my ear to the phone, I could only hear myself breathing. I thought I must not have held the button long enough. I held it longer and dialed again. I only heard my breathing again. This made me even more panicked, since I was losing time against whatever my perceived threat was. I got this crazy idea, and when I reset the phone again, I held the receiver away from my face and covered it so that my breath would not get picked up. I still heard breathing and realized that it was not mine. I said hello. The sound stopped, and I realized that it was coming from someone on the only other phone in the house, just down the hall in my parents' room. I could hear shuffling around. I dropped the phone, fight or flight kicked in, and I ran barefoot out of my house over what were normally really painful rocks and debris. I ran off our property, and luckily, a neighbor just happened to see the fear on my face and waved me over. Hey guys, sorry, I don't come here very frequently and forgot I posted about this. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood that relates to my paranoia and whatnot, and some things that I suspect is related to the story, but I don't know for sure because there's not enough evidence. I think my parents still keep a lot of info from me, even though I'm an adult now. Some more stuff that I know is related is this. The neighbor who I ran to was my best friend growing up and was a year younger than me. I will call him B. I would often go over there in the mornings before we'd head to the bus stop together. When he let me in that morning, I remember still being panicked and making him lock up the doors and windows. He was already scared just seeing how afraid I was, and I told him what happened, and he told me to call 911. As I was on the phone, B told me to look outside. We saw a pickup truck driving wildly off my property and down the road, past B's house. An officer arrived at B's house and took us back to my place where the door was wide open and some things were scattered around. We went to my parents' room and every other part of the house. As far as I could tell, nothing had been taken. B and I went to school, and I ended up getting out early. I don't remember how, but word got to my mom that someone broke in when I was alone, but that's all she knew, so apparently, she and brother thought I got murdered or something, and were crying when they got to my school. Anyway, the truck that drove off wildly passed by the bus stop at the time when the older, middle school kids were there. B's older sister said they all took note of it and saw the truck drive into the nearby park. B's older sister was friends with a middle-aged creep who lived nearby. A lot of weirdos and stories where I grew up, and would go on walks with him sometimes. A week or so after the break-in, B's older sister and the creep walked past a driveway with the same truck in it. B's older sister told my mom and the police, who then interviewed people at the house. It turns out that one of the sons was allowed to use that truck to go to school and church, but he swore he did not break in or anything, that he was at school at the time. Police never did anything, but there was not a whole lot to go on, and our police were incompetent. My brother knew the two brothers who lived there, and had he and his friends jumped the guy we suspected. I still don't know 100% who did it though. Even though I know it all happened, a part of me has a hard time believing it, and was stressful for a while because I would sometimes tell myself it was just my paranoia and wild imagination behind all of it. Then I remember that other people saw the truck too though. I was really afraid of trucks that looked like that for a long time afterward. B and I were obviously very anxious about related matters for a while too. We would work each other into these weird hysteria things sometimes in the mornings before school, where we would sit around with knives to defend ourselves, paralyzed with fear because we heard a weird noise. I overheard my parents talking not long after the incident about the police finding pry bar marks on my bedroom window and that they knew about indications of our house being broken into repeatedly over the years. I did not tell my parents I heard that, and it obviously terrified me even more. There was another incident with what I think was the same truck. I don't remember how long after the first incident, but it was still during the time when B and I would work ourselves into a panic. I was spending the night at B's, and we started noticing some noises and getting more anxious. We decided to go upstairs and get some knives and sit on the couch. When we got to the couch, we noticed a truck sitting outside, so we ducked down and watched it for a while. Then we heard a really loud cracking sound that made us run out of the room. We thought about waking up B's dad, but he was a really angry person, and we did not know if it would be worth it. We worked up the courage to go back to the window, and we saw nothing out there anymore. We were still scared, and thinking that maybe we should figure out how to get to my place. I remember pacing around, and when my back was turned, B whisper yelled my name. I turned toward the window and realized the truck had been there the whole time. Its lights turned back on, and tires started screeching. I almost pissed myself, but the truck drove off. I ended up getting my mom to take B and I back to my place. There were a lot of other strange things that would happen in my neighborhood, the woods, etc., as I was growing up. Most of the people there, including myself, were really bizarre, and I have mixed feelings about the person that town, the people, and my family made me become. I forgot to mention that I also overheard my parents talking about how the truck matched the description of another truck, and how that was making them consider boarding up our windows. Part of what made all of this harder on me was that it all happened not longer after the resolution of my mom facing increasingly intense stalking over the course of several years. So, even as a little kid, the idea of someone or some group of people making a concerted effort to terrorize me didn't seem that far-fetched. Be me. I was 10 or 11 years old at the time this happened. I am obsessed with cracking my dad's safe. I spend hours doing it while he is still at work. Finally, after months of trying, I get to it when he forgot to spin the dial and reset the pins. Eventually, all I do is wiggle the dial over the final number he left it on, and it clicks open. I look through all of this old shit, papers, some cool old coins, some paper money from different parts of the world. I find 3 documents rolled up in a leather pouch. I unroll one of the documents. It's heavy paper, medium white/yellow, with a slight parchment grain. No edge designs or graphics. It's about 6 inches across and 18 inches long. At the top is a large string of words in a language that I now think was Latin. The writing was in various sizes, depending on the paragraph. It seemed handwritten, and was in both black and red ink. After 3 paragraphs, in the center of the page was my father's name, written large in gold and black ink, then another 3 paragraphs of text. At the very bottom there were 3 signatures, but there was no printing, so I could not make out any of the names. I unraveled the 2 other scrolls. They were identical, except the printed names in the middle were my name and my brother's name. At the time, I was simply bewildered by the documents. I put them back and close the safe, but I don't spin the dial. I leave it sitting on the last number host as I found it. Turns out, this was not right. My dad asks if I have been in his safe. I admit it. He tells me to stay out. I ask him about the free scrolls in the pouch, and he tells me I don't need to think about them right now. I feel stupid for being caught. I go to sleep and don't mention it again. About 10 years later, I ask my dad about those documents, and he says it's not important, that they are stock certificates, that I will get them when he dies. I am fairly certain there is no way they are stock certificates, and I want to know what they are. Eastern Kentucky is fucking creepy. I am currently in Western Kentucky, but all of my mother's family is from far East Kentucky, Jackson, Hazard, that area. I visited some of her cousins back about 20 years ago in Hazard, and they still did not have running water. There was a little family cemetery up on the hill. There were combs that was super spooky. The kids that lived there told me that they heard and saw all kinds of scary shit in those hills. Their mother told us a story that happened in the house I was staying in there with them about her mother being very ill, and she would sleep with her at night just to comfort her. She said the night that her mother died, she woke up and saw what she thought to be a small black bear walking around the bed, silently staring at her mother. She said that she was so scared she could not scream or move, but that it just paced around the bed, watching her mom. She said she eventually fell asleep, she guesses, or passed out from fear, but when she woke up a little bit later, her mom was dead. Continued. My grandfather always used to tell me a story that his grandfather told him about that area of Kentucky. The story went that he, my great-great-grandfather, was riding his horse home late one evening and came to a part of the path that was always very unsettling. The horse never wanted to go through that part of the path. He said this was a heavily wooded part of the path, with trees making a canopy above for about a quarter mile. He always had to gouge the horse to make it go. Anyway, that evening the horse was acting even weirder and actually tried to buck him off. He eventually got the horse to go through, and when he did, he said that about halfway through the canopy, something dropped down from the trees onto the back of the horse and wrapped its cold, clammy arms around him. He said it squeezed him, and he could feel claws on his stomach. The horse took off like a bat out of hell, and he fell off and started running for his life. He said that it felt like whatever it was that grabbed him was chasing him, but he never looked back. He ran into the barn. I always assumed it was his, but I'm not sure, and hid and literally thought his heart was going to burst. He said he hid until morning and never found the horse. That story used to absolutely scare the daylights out of me. The funny thing was, years later, I ended up reading a different account of the same type of attack in a book of Appalachian ghost stories and legends from the area. Fucking creeped me out, whether it was true or not. There's quite a few UFO incidents in Kentucky. I know of 2 instances where competent pilots gave chase. One ended in the death of a decorated fighter pilot in the 1950s. It's a case where the character of the individual cannot be easily questioned. The other instance apparently happened in Louisville, where police officers witnessed a glowing orb in the sky. They had a helicopter in the area that could barely keep up with this thing before it sped off into the night sky in the 1990s. It was about November time when this happened to me. I get home from an EDM show with my roommates. I crash in my bed. I end up having a very vivid dream. I am walking in my childhood friend's backyard. We used to play there all the time, so it was really familiar. There is purple light everywhere, similar to how the sky gets green before a tornado/hail. My face explodes in pain. I could feel it in my dream. I find myself sitting on my ass, unable to move. A figure approaches from the glass door to the house. I can't make out what it looks like. It's just a dark close shape. It walks towards me at a steady pace. I feel panicked. The figure gets all up in my grill. I wake up. I cannot breathe out of my nose. I can only open a corner of my mouth. I am freaking out in bed because I can barely breathe. I scratch at my face to find out what the fuck is wrong with me. I am covered in dry blood. I am plugging up my nostrils and gluing my lips together. I get up and run to the bathroom. I almost pass out as I get up. I spend 20 minutes in the bathroom, cleaning myself up in a daze. I get back to my room. The sheets where my head lays is covered in dried blood.